So it really happened. Before we said abracadabra, we hit 30,000 mark. Amazing day. Thank you everyone for your wonderful support. One more very important thing that we would like to share with you. We announced our giveaway when we reached 25,000. At the end of this video, we're going to announce the winner. You have to wait till the end of this video to know whether you won that wonderful speed light from Nikon, the SB5000. So, on to today's video. It's about auto ISO. Oh, sorry, it's not ISO, it's ISO. Do you want to know why it is not ISO and it is ISO? Well, there's a good story behind it, so please Google it, because if we start explaining, it would probably end up taking the whole video itself. So when I say auto ISO, you will say,
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Not so. If we have to go by the comments that we are receiving, well, everyone wants to know everything about photography, including the most basic ones like the ISO. So what is ISO? ISO indicates the sensitivity of the sensor. It's not a unit. It just indicates that higher the value, higher the sensitivity, and lower the value, lower the sensitivity. This, in combination with the other two elements in your exposure triangle, which is aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, a proper combination of all three together allows you to capture an image perfectly. All this while, the most popular way of, besides the manual mode, is to use either an aperture priority auto, where you will select the aperture and let the camera select the shutter speed, or the shutter priority auto, where you will select the shutter speed and the camera select an appropriate aperture. In both cases, you are supposed to key in your favorite ISO or your choice of ISO depending on the light condition that you are working in. Which means if you are working in brightly lit conditions like daylight or brightly lit situations like this, you will choose a lower ISO. A lower ISO also comes with an advantage of having less noise or better quality image. As you push the sensor to a higher ISO, of course, you will be able to receive the image or record the image in lower lighting conditions, but it also comes with a disadvantage of sometimes introducing unwanted, undesired noise or grains in your image. Now that we have explained the basics, let's get into explaining what is auto ISO. This is probably the most appropriate mode for a photographer who is working in unpredictable lighting conditions at various corners of his field. Like, for example, a sports photographer, when he turns his camera towards the audience, there is one light. In the bench, there is one light, and out in the field, there is another kind of light, but still has to maintain a certain speed in his camera. To demonstrate it to you, I've taken the help of my friend Shikha to come and be our model today. Now, over to the setup. This is what we're going to do. Our model Shikha is waiting outside in the corridor, and it's brightly lit. And she's going to walk in to this relatively dimly lit interior. Let's start the shoot. We requested Shikha to walk from a brightly lit corridor and to walk into our relatively underlit studio. And we shot them using aperture priority auto, followed up by the same sequence in shutter priority auto, and then using the auto ISO method. There are two additional adjustments that you have to do in your camera menu before you actually go out and shoot in the auto ISO mode. For which you go into the menu, select the shooting menu and go to ISO sensitivity setting and go into the auto ISO sensitivity control and switch it on. Below which you will get two controls. One is the maximum ISO that the camera can go during the shoot process. I'm going to select a safe one which will minimize, if at all, if there are any grains and noise that comes in. Minimum shutter speed. This setting will help you to stay with a minimum of 1 by 1/25th of a second, which according to camera thumb rules is a safe one for a still photographer. Let me tell you, this menu will differ from manufacturer to manufacturer and model to model. What we tried to do was to simulate a typical scenario which a photographer can encounter in terms of difficult lighting situation. So the first shot, aperture priority mode. So I've selected 3.5 as my preferred aperture and I'm shooting at 400 ISO. The first shot, yeah, relatively sharp. Then I come down, the shutter speed start dancing here and there. Here at this one point, I see the shutter speed dropping to 1/60th of a second and she's also walking and it has resulted in a blurry image. Now let's move further. It's become 1/60, but there is a blur, but it's relatively less. And then, yeah, suddenly you see an increase in the shutter speed because of there was some kick light which was coming from one side of the corridor. The shutter speed is 1/100th of a second, but still recorded some motion. The next one, surprisingly, though it is 1/60th of a second, I managed to freeze her motion. These things keep happening. So the next image is 1/60th of a second. You can see a blur in the image. Then the next one is 1/80th of a second, higher shutter speed, but still there was a little motion. Mind you, the aperture is still the same, ISO is still the same. The shutter speed keep dancing, right? Now, light started dropping as soon as she started entering into the studio. Obviously, the light dropped drastically. Now, shutter speed is 1/60th because of the bright backlight. She got underexposed, but still there is movement. At 1/30th of a second, let's go back and show the full frame for you. She appears to be sharp, but I have some motion in her arms, hair, etc. The next frame, now the shutter speed has started dropping, 1/13th of a second, and a very exaggerated motion, okay? 0.1 second, obviously you're not going to have, it's almost complete blur, almost like a motion blur. Blurred again, completely in a blur. It's 1/13th of a second and she's also sitting down. And then here she is, she's sat down, she's resting, but the image is still in a blur. Let's look at what happens when we go to the shutter priority auto. Okay, she's back in her position number 1. I have kept the shutter speed as 1/125th of a second because that's what the thumb rule says. She's crisp and clear, that's fine, that's clear, everything is crisp and clear. Clear again, sharp image again, and now she started moving into the dark area. But we're working at 1/125th of a second, mind you, so it is ruled out the shake to a great extent, a camera shake to a great extent. But what will happen is the camera will run out of aperture opening. At this point, camera has hit 2.5, 1.4, which is the maximum possible opening for that particular lens that I was working with. And you can see that the camera is stuck, it cannot open anymore, thereby it started underexposing for that particular reading. So you have an underexposed image. Now we saw how shutter priority auto works and how aperture priority auto works. And now let's see how auto ISO setting works. Let's look at the images now. The shutter speed is 1/125th of a second so that I can freeze her, and f4 because it's a good aperture I thought to work with. And second frame, third one, you actually don't see any exposure change. All images, they look more or less very similar in terms of sharpness, depth, and the whole feel of the image is very similar. I mean, you can see it yourself. Now she's entering, still the exposure is, she's entering the room, that's where the light is at the lowest, but still she's exposed very well. The background is exposed properly, the image is sharp enough. Now you can see her face. She's entered the studio and she is sharp, clear. In the previous situation, these images were either underlit or shaky. Now she is crisp and clear. Very simple. A still photographer can get away with these kind of situations even if he is working with aperture priority or shutter priority auto, if he is fast enough to kind of switch the ISO. But it's not so for a videographer. Someone who's using a DSLR in this kind of situations, if he encounters these kind of drastic change in the lighting conditions, he's going to be in real soup. Let me show it to you. We're going to now shoot with a fixed ISO for the light outside. The image is stabilized, everything is fine and okay. And it's moving, everything is all right till now, and she enters into the room and you start losing light. The camera has not readjusted itself to compensate for the loss of light inside. Now, the same situation with the auto ISO setting. Shutter speed and the aperture is selected, camera is in auto ISO mode. Now, action. She's walking towards the camera now and everything is clean, clear. Now, as she enters into the room, quite contrary to what happened in the previous situation, the camera started adjusting the brightness levels on its own very seamlessly. You can't even figure out when the camera switched the ISO. It happened so seamlessly, like I said. So this is actually a blessing for a videographer. So, seeing is believing. If your favorite shooting mode is aperture priority or shutter priority or for that matter manual mode, continue shooting in that mode. But be aware of the situation. When you get into a tricky situation like this, probably auto ISO may be a mode that will come very handy. So, next time when you are in a situation like this, do try it out. You probably will be surprised very pleasantly. And now, the most awaited moment of this video, I am sure, is the winner of the giveaway, which we announced when we reached 25,000 subscriptions. The fantastic SB5000 from Nikon. Once again, thank you Nikon India. And the winner is, well, the winner was selected by our colleagues in the office. Of course, when I saw it, I thought it was a fantastic selection. When I read through it, it also had a merit. If you have any problems, you know who to shoot. It's not me, it's my guys in the studio. So, the winner is Gaurav Prakash. Congratulations, Gaurav. You've won this fantastic SB5000 speed light from Nikon. What we're going to do is to intimate you in your comments column as a reply. You are expected to reply back from the same sign-in ID with your contact details so that we can reach it to you. Almost 1,600 people responded. Really appreciate your contributions, your comments, your feedback and everything. It's extremely important for us. So, looking forward to meeting you with another interesting video very soon. Bye for now.